by May, I was going to be homeless and jobless. I was so afraid that she was not going to wake up.
Because a lot of moms will hide the fact because it might seem like it's, what kind of mom are you,
Yeah. Welcome to Tiny Tales,
where we explore the unique experience
that giving birth is to every woman.
We will hear the personal tales of women in Ghana who will take us on their journeys
to motherhood, from conception to birth,
to the first 3 months after the baby is born.
This season is sponsored and co-hosted by Gaia Organic,
your plug for fresh, healthy organic food in Jawulu, Accra.
My name is Yasmin and I'll be your host. In this episode, I'll be talking to Lisa, mother of ACH2, and the story of how long it can take before the fear of losing one's baby goes away for a new mom. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you.
It's good to have you.
Thank you.
First question I would love to ask you is, was AC planned?
No, she was not planned. She was not planned at all. We had just decided we were going to move to Ghana. We were living in Denmark, and then we became pregnant.
Talk me through from the whole journey of it. How did it start? How did you guys were you guys working towards it? Oh no, it was not even in the plan at all.
It was not in the plan. We knew we both wanted children, and we knew we that was going to happen at some point.
Yeah.
But we had just gotten to a point where my husband had just gotten the job offer in Ghana. We had just decided, and I was looking for jobs. I'd already started contacting companies here, and then we were actually here. I helped him move here basically, and then I went back home, and I was gonna get everything settled, quit my job, cancel our lease in our apartment and everything so we could move here. And then I found out when I came back home that I was pregnant. But we got pregnant right before the whole world closed down with COVID.
Yes.
So this was end of January. Middle of March, the whole world decided to close its borders, everything. So we actually ended up in a pretty horrible situation where my husband was here and I was in Denmark, so we weren't even together. And then I had already, before I found out I was pregnant, I had already quit my job, and also I at least put in my resignation, and I also put in my resignation on my lease, which means that by May, I was going to be homeless and jobless. So the first few months of my pregnancy, I actually spent most of my time worrying about when the borders were going to open. Yeah. When could I see my husband? When could I move to Ghana? Because even then, when I found out I was pregnant, I wanted to give birth here. I was supposed to give birth here, and I was open to that, and I was excited about that. So I was just wondering, when can I get started on that? And it was actually not until I was 5 months pregnant that my midwife said to me, I think you need to decide to stay here. And I'm so happy she did. That day I went home and I cried my eyes out, and I was telling my mom, she hit it right on the nail. Because at that point, so I didn't have my job, and I was living in my brother's summer house because you can't move into a hotel or anything because it's COVID. You literally couldn't go anywhere.
Correct.
So then I was lucky that once she had said that, I called my husband and he was like, totally fine, stick around, give birth in Denmark, and then come afterwards to see what the world looks like at that point.
Was your husband was he able to come to you?
Yeah, so he came when I was 7.5 months pregnant. Ghana opened the borders and he would come. So 7.5 months in was the first time he came, and then we were lucky that the company he worked for gave him 4 months of working from home, which was then from Denmark. Wow. Yeah, so he could work from Denmark. Good. Yeah, so he came. He was part of the birth, and he was there for the first few months, and then he left just a few weeks before we did. So when we came to Ghana, so that actually worked out really, really well.
How was that transition for you, knowing that you've got your baby coming soon? Your husband just came back to Denmark to be with you. Yeah. How was that nesting phase for you?
So it was definitely not what I imagined, because it wasn't our place. It was a place I knew we were going to be there for 6 months. It wasn't. I don't think it was the same feeling as it would be now when I have my own place and I can set it up properly and do all that little planning that I would have liked to have done.
Yeah. And then was she C-section? Was she like a?
She was a vaginal birth.
Vaginal birth.
And that's what I wanted. I wasn't thinking that I would, if there was going to be a C-section, then it's fine. If it needed to be a C-section, that would have been okay. But it was a vaginal birth, which is what I wanted. And it was actually, she ended up coming 2 weeks late. Okay. So in Denmark, when you're 12 days past your due date, you have to be induced. Correct. So they don't want you to be pregnant for too long, right? Correct. So they want the baby out 2 weeks after the due date. So they started inducing me on these pills, these Augusta pills that you have to take, and then they get the contractions going. So I took them for 24 hours before I started getting contractions. I actually wanted to give birth in water in the tub.
Okay.
But because I took the pills can go in and affect the baby's, I think it was the baby's heartbeat and maybe possibly also your own or
Okay.
something.
Okay.
So they needed to monitor me throughout the whole,
Okay.
when I was in the hospital. So couldn't give birth in water. We should.
But when AC was in there, when you were baking her nice and warm, how was your connection with her? Did you feel like a mommy yet, or has that sunk in? Did you know?
No.
Oh, now I'm gonna be your mom. Was there any kind of excitement like that?
None of that. I didn't have, but I had the most when I was pregnant. I had physically a very easy pregnancy, not too many issues. But mentally, I think it's around 5 months where they tell you you're supposed to feel the baby move every single day.
Okay.
And there were times when I didn't feel it, and that was really stressful for me. And I think that didn't help. It didn't help that it felt stressful, because then I actually needed to go to a couple extra scans at the hospital to make sure that she was still there, that her heart was still beating, because I had this really strong fear that her heart would have stopped beating while she was in my belly. You know, it's really, really rough. And I think it was also on top of all the anxiety of my living situation, my giving birth, where was I going to live after? There's so much uncertainty that I don't think I was very connected with my body. So I also wasn't very connected with her.
Okay.
I was being responsible, but I wasn't that connected with what I was actually going through.
And did that move on till after you had AC as well? Did you still feel the same way after you had AC?
So it morphed into a fear of SIDS. So SIDS is sudden infant death syndrome. I was so afraid that she was not going to wake up. So for a long time, I kept checking if she was breathing, like putting my finger on her nose, making sure that I could feel the air, putting my hand on her chest, and did that for several months, where I had a really hard time sleeping next to her. First 2 months, we used a carrier a lot. Izzy didn't like sleeping on her own, so I used to carry her a lot for her naps. And for all of her, even the night, it took her 2 months before she realized there was a difference between night and day.
Yeah.
So only after 2 months that she started sleeping at night and not taking naps throughout the whole day, including night. So what we did for the first 2 months is every single day after work, my husband would take her for her evening nap.
Yeah.
And for those, and sometimes that'd be 3 hours, and sometimes it would be a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And that's when I slept. I could sort of calculate, okay, when is she going to go down for the next?
Correct.
So I told my husband, okay, now she's yours. Good night. And I went into our bedroom and I closed the door and I went to sleep.
You know, I've got a 2-year-old as well. With G. I still have that fear.
Yeah.
She just recovered from this really horrible flu cold recently. And every night, if I didn't hear her like cough, I would wake up because I was expecting her to cough. That was like a good sign that, okay, she's good, you know. But I would still wake up and put my ears on her chest, touch her chest, like you, finger under her nose. Like I just had to feel warmth. I would touch her face to make sure she's nice and warm, you know. And I still have that fear. It's really brave of you to discuss it, because a lot of women just let it be and they don't want to discuss their fears because they don't want to stand out, or they want anybody to look at them like, oh, you know, but you're a mom, you should be able to handle all these things on your own. No, but we still have like that fear. And then what did you do? How did you overcome it? How are you overcoming it?
I don't think I have. No, I still have it. Especially when she's sick. Especially because I feel so ill-equipped to handle her illnesses.
Yeah.
I don't know what they are. I'm not a doctor. I have no idea. And I know they can go very wrong. And the first time she was very sick, she was not more than 4 or 5 months old, and I hadn't noticed it.
Yeah.
And it was my husband who said, I think we should go to the hospital. And I was like, no, I can tell she was a bit off, but she's going to be fine. And also because I believe that you know, you have to let them develop an immune system. So you know,
I agree. I still agree by that, you know.
Yeah, like if you pump them with pills too much, they're never going to develop that. So that's where I thought we were. And then we went to the hospital, and they did all the blood, taking out the blood and all. I found out she had some sort of infection, so she needed antibiotics. And still to this day, I feel guilty that I wasn't the one who caught it. If it's my husband who puts her to bed and he sleeps with her, I sometimes check on a little monitor.
Does your husband know you do that?
Oh, you're gonna know now. But I sometimes just check that, you know, that everything is fine. Because I know he likes to like cuddle with her and put his arm around her. Yeah. And I'm like, you know, move the arm away. Like, she's too small to have like your full arm lying on her and stuff like that. So yeah, I still do that.
So I know one of my happiest moments was when I had to breastfeed my kid, right? It did take a longer time for her to actually get milk. It took 24 hours, but it was one of the best times for me because then I felt like her mom. I was like, this is it. She's out here. She's real.
Yeah.
And I'm breastfeeding this real baby, you know? Giving that up was one of the hardest things for me to do. I didn't want to stop breastfeeding it, but I knew I had to because I have to work full time. I can't be with her all the time. How was that for you with breastfeeding?
Yeah, I knew I wanted to breastfeed, and I actually had the flow from the beginning, but her latching technique was lacking. Yeah. So in the beginning, my husband had to help. So it took 3 people to breastfeed for me in the beginning.
Wow.
Like he had to help, like open her mouth so she can get on the nipple properly, and it took a little while, but she got it. But for some reason, it still hurt. So I actually ended up getting a wound. And the wound was so severe that I was bleeding sometimes from it. And she had swallowed some of my blood, so it was in her stool, which is very worrying because stool color is all about everything in the beginning. Yeah. But it was fine. There was nothing wrong with her. She was okay. But then about 10 days in, I actually got a breast infection. So my milk duct clogged. And the best way to fix that is that the baby just has to keep breastfeeding. Because she can actually get everything out versus if you pump, you're not necessarily getting everything out.
It must have been painful though.
It was painful. And then what happened was, so it was on the right breast, but that was the infection, that was also the wound, like everything was happening on that side. But you had to keep breastfeeding, so I just kept going. But then I think I was neglecting the left breast because I was not, the production just went down on that one. Yeah. So I actually ended up at the end of that breast infection having one breast that had a lot of milk, unfortunately the breast that had a wound, and the other breast that didn't. So it kept hurting, and I kept trying to use different methods to try to get this to heal, but it wasn't healing. It wasn't until almost 2 months in, and I told my mom, I'm giving up. Like I can't. It hurt every single time I was sitting down to breastfeed, and it's a lot in the beginning. Yeah, it hurt every time she would latch on. It would hurt. But my mom then, without me knowing, had gone to the pharmacy, and she had found these little patches that you're supposed to put on, and they're super fine for the baby. So even if you take it off, you don't have to wash or anything. The baby is going to be fine taking it. Yeah. And within 3 days, it had healed.
Wow. So mom was determined to get AC on that booby.
She was. And I'm just like, why didn't anybody mention this earlier? I've been open about it. I talked to a lot of people about it.
2 months and it's pretty painful.
It was painful, and I was so close to giving up. Once that healed, then I was like, okay, now I get it. Yeah. Now I get what breastfeeding is all about. The beauty of it, the ease of it, the fact that you have your food with you everywhere you go, like all that was, and in fact, you have comfort with you everywhere you go as well. It was so nice. And then I continued to. She was 18 months. Yeah, and I'm like you. It was difficult to let go. Yeah, it was difficult because I actually didn't know how I was going to comfort her without, because that's all I had used. Like every time she would cry, or putting her to bed, or waking up in the middle of the night. Booba, baby on. I mean, that was the solution. Also, because she didn't use a pacifier. She didn't use. She didn't have a favorite teddy or anything. Like, she just had my boob. That's all she had. But it took me a while afterwards to figure out. It was like I was missing. Like, okay, so what am I supposed to do now? Like, what's my role now? Now that I'm not the main comfort food giver source, and the one who can put her to bed. Like that was all in my breasts, and I was like, okay, if I don't have that as an option anymore. Am I still her like primary caretaker now? Is she still gonna find that bond with me? Like it's
pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So that being said, question I have to ask: When did you feel like, okay, she's real and I'm her mom? When did you get that connection?
I think it took me about a year to get to that identity. Like, okay. So I think what happened to me is so when she was born, you know how some people feel like that swarm of love. And the moment the baby, you can even get it when you're pregnant, but when you get the baby on your chest. I didn't feel that. I think what I felt mostly when she was born was relief, like she was out. I was happy to have my body back. I was happy that I was not in pain. I was just happy
discomfort
I was just happy that she was out, and also that other people could help take care of her, and that I wasn't the only one that had to make sure that she was okay. So I felt that, and then I felt responsibility. I felt that even during pregnancy, that she is my responsibility. And then the love, it took maybe a day. Like maybe the next day, I got that swarm. And I remember my mom came over and she looked at her, and I was sitting there crying, and she's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Like that's sort of love. But then the next thing I realized is the identity. Like somebody came to me and said, "So that's your daughter?" And I was like, I guess yes. So you're her mom? Yes, I guess I'm now a mom, and this is my daughter. This is my offspring. It took a while to sort of identify as that. Yeah. And I actually spoke to a therapist who told me that it can take up to about 2 years for people to really identify that way.
But you know what? Lisa, you're being very honest. That's the thing. It's a lot of people would just be, oh yeah, like from the moment she was out, straight away, you know, oh, the love and the attachment. And
Yeah.
at some point, we've had our lives and us to ourselves for the longest time, and then for 9 months, you're making a beautiful baby, yes, and you're gonna be a mom, but it doesn't mean that you're detached from who you were, because a lot of moms will hide the fact because it might seem that it's, what kind of mom are you, you know, like.
Yeah.
But in actual fact, it's right.
It's right, and I think I've been a great mom for AC throughout
You're
the whole
an amazing mom.
And even if I didn't go around saying I'm a mom, because it doesn't feel that way, you can still be a good mom. And I think we need to accept the fact that there are many ways we are doing this.
Thank you. And there are many
Yeah.
ways for you to actually get that bond and that attachment. It doesn't just, it's healthy to actually speak about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Lisa, thank you so much. Like, I have to say, it's pretty brave of you coming up to speak about the fear and to speak about when you identify to become as a person, I'm a mom. It's amazing because personally, even I had that struggles as well. I still have the struggles with the SID. Like,
Yeah.
I still do.
Just the fear of
The
everything. Yeah,
fear,
of
I
losing.
still have it till now. And I know a
Yeah.
lot of moms out there can definitely relate to that as well.
Yeah.
And the identity.
Yes.
Identity, okay, I would say maybe it took me quite a few months, but yes, I got it, you know. But then the fear, I still have that fear.
Yeah.
If you have any kind of advice out there for moms that are battling with that fear as well, is there any way maybe they could speak to someone about it? How do you manage it? How do you go about it?
I feel like the fear during pregnancy and then the fear afterwards. So the fear during pregnancy, I mean, all of it, the solution is to not keep it in.
Yeah.
Always. And I think one of the things I did for the pregnancy is I don't think I shared it too much. Like I didn't, I went to the hospital sure to get a couple of extra checks, but I wasn't really super honest about how deeply ingrained it actually was in me, that I was actually worried that I couldn't feel her and that she was dead. And I think the solution there probably, of course, talk to people if you're feeling the same, but also probably check in with yourself. Like spend a little bit of time, 10 minutes every day, meditating, praying, whatever, like just sitting, turning off everything, and just like focus on your belly, focus on the baby, do a little dance, whatever. Just like have that. Try to see if you can connect, even if it feels artificial to begin with. Try to tell yourself that every day I need to connect with my baby. I think that would work. I think that's what I would do for if I ever got pregnant again. Like really focus on that connection from the beginning, so that I could relax that my body was going to tell me if something was off. Issy or whoever's going to be, well, she's not going to be my Billy next time, but whoever's going to be my Billy next time is going to tell me if something is wrong. I trust that process. And I think afterwards, so the fear of losing after she is born, I didn't share it too much with my husband, actually. No. I was just awake. And I was looking after her. But I think I didn't share because I felt like it was my responsibility.
But do you think he could have helped you?
Yes, he could have definitely. He could have taken maybe more of the nights. He could have maybe, said like, Lisa, I'm going to sit right here. I'm going to look at her so you can take a break. Or like giving me that rock that he is to me. But I didn't give him a chance because I felt like, also because he had to go back to work after like 2 days or something. So I was alone with her a lot in the beginning. And I felt like she was my responsibility 100%, even though she wasn't. But I felt that way. So hence it must also be my responsibility to take care of this fear that I have.
Yeah. But thank you so much for sharing that, Lisa. It's been great. It's been absolutely great. And I'm sure there are many parts of Lisa's story that resonated with you. Perhaps you could see yourself in that same fear that she had, or in how Lisa did actually move on from it or managed it in a way. The power of the person's personal story is that we all relate differently. We want to hear your thoughts and feedback, so please leave us a comment. Thank you to Lisa and all of you who are watching at home. This is created and hosted by Tiny Reusers.